It was an important day on the island of Sodor. A new library was going to be opened. Everyone was excited. There was going to be a ceremony with a brass band, a red carpet, and boxes of books. All the children and all the grown-ups loved reading books and listening to stories. A famous storyteller was going to tell the children a special story. All the engines wanted to collect the famous storyteller, but Sir Topham Hatt chose Thomas. Thomas was excited. He boomed. Tooted Thomas excitedly. Thomas puffed over to Brendam Docks. He wanted to do a good job. Thomas arrived at the docks. He looked up and down, left and right, and all around looking for someone famous. But all he could see was a lady with a notepad and a big box of cookies. Thomas asked. Said the lady. Tooted Thomas happily. So the famous storyteller hopped on Thomas's footplate, and Thomas puffed away. Whistled Thomas. Pirates' Cove was full of caves and secret tunnels. Legend had it that pirates used to bury their treasure there. Wheezed Thomas happily. But on his way there, Thomas saw James. James was in trouble. Thomas puffed to the famous storyteller. So Thomas buffered up to James and his passenger train and chuffed away. Cried James. Thomas arrived at Maithwaite just in time. Said Thomas to the famous storyteller. Thomas puffed as fast as he could. The ruined castle had tall turrets and a great big door. The old kings and queens of Sodor used to live there. Puffed Thomas happily. But on his way there, Thomas saw Emily in a siding. She was looking sad. She was taking flour to the bakery, but her whistle had broken. It wasn't safe to work without it. Puffed Thomas to the famous storyteller. So Thomas buffered up to Emily and took her to the bakery. Cried Emily. Thomas arrived at the bakery just in time. Emily was pleased, and Thomas puffed away. Chuffed Thomas. He had heard Misty Valley was full of magic. Puffed Thomas. But on his way, Thomas saw Percy. Percy was in trouble. A river had flooded its banks. Percy was up to his buffers in water, and his firebox had gone out. Whistled Thomas to the famous storyteller. Slowly, Thomas chuffed into the water. The water came right up to his footplate. The famous storyteller had to stand on her box of cookies to keep her feet dry. Thomas bravely buffered up to Percy, and he pushed his friend out. Cried Percy. By now, it was time to go to the grand opening, and Thomas was late. Wheezed Thomas. Thomas arrived at the new library station. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting. Puffed Thomas sadly. Cried the famous storyteller. She was very excited, and Thomas was delighted. The famous storyteller cut the red ribbon in front of the new library. She declared it open. Then the children and the engines all listened as the famous storyteller told them the story of her wonderful adventures with Thomas and his friends on the magical island of Sodor.